Now, last week you heard about the biggest lie that Jesse James Bailey ever had to tell a moonshiner to get him in, or to get the liquor anyway. Now, this week you're going to hear about how a moonshiner told Jesse James Bailey a big lie. Tell us about that, Mr. Bailey.
Well, sir, now that happened up on head of Little Pine Creek, about 10 or 12 miles from Marshall. Way back in the days when there's no automobiles, no nothing, you had to walk. And I always done my rating of my stills in Madison County of a nighttime. You can't catch a moonshiner in Madison County in daytime. He has a picket put out on the ridge with a shotgun, and if he sees anything disturbing, he'll fire at a squirrel, you know, and then the moonshiners all leave. So I made a practice, and no other officer ever had, of going in before daylight, before the moonshiner comes or the picket comes or anything. So in this instance, I was watching this still up on their head. It's right between Little Pine Creek and Little Sandy Mush, and I was watching, had two men, and we got in there about 3 o'clock in the morning. We stayed until daylight. It was wintertime then, snowing, snow coming down, and it was pretty cold on us, but we was dressed for it, in good shape. We toughed it out there till after daylight, got up around 7 o'clock, nobody come. And we just held a little consultation and decided we'd tear up the outfit and go home. And so about the time we decided that, looked across a long piece of grassland that was up there. That mountaintop grows grass, you know, and they graze it, called it the grasslands. And even in the wintertime, cattle can live on it. But anyhow, I looked about 40 or 50 yards, and I seen a man coming right towards the still. We was right at the still almost, and it was ready to run, all ready. So he come walking right toward the still, but it's in the days when the big chestnut trees of this country had just fallen over. The blight had hit them. And several of them big chestnut trees in that grassland had fell over, and as he come on towards the still, he'd stop and get him break out some dead limbs out of the laps of them trees, and he finally got a big armful of wood like this. And he come right on up to the distillery and throwed it down right in front of the still like he was gonna start a fire. And by that time, I'd got down to him. I knew the fellow very well. I said, "Good morning, George." George looked up and he said, "Good morning, Sheriff." I said, "What are you doing here this morning? It's cold." He says, "I'd started fox hunting." I said, "My golly, it's too cold for fox hunting, ain't it?" He says, "Mighty cold," but says, "I couldn't do no work at home, and I just decided I'd go fox hunting." I said, "Well, where's your dogs?" He says, "I'm going over here to Frank Reynolds on Little Sandy and go with Frank." Says he's got dogs. Well, I knew Frank Reynolds, and Frank did, and Frank was a fox hunter and had dogs. And I knew that is true. But I said, "George, what was you going to do with that wood that you picked up as you come across the field over there and this pile of wood here?" I said, "What is you going to do with that?" "I'm going to fox hunting." He says, "Going to build up a little fire here and warm my feet." Says, "My feet's cold and my shoes are wet. I wanted to dry them out." I says, "You wasn't going to build a fire under this big still here to warm your feet by and dry your shoes by, were you?" George says, "Lord of mercy, is there still here?" Either one of us could put her hand on still. I said, "Well, what's this, George?" George looked down at it. He said, "Sheriff, is that a still?" I said, "It sure is, George." He said, "I'll swear to you, that's the first thing I ever seen in my life." And says, "If I'd have known that had been here, I wouldn't have stopped for $1,000. I said, "George, I have a good notion to knock you down. Don't you look at me like you think I believe that?" I says, "You know I don't believe a story like that." He says, "It's the truth, Sheriff. I never saw one before in my life." I said, "George, I'll tell you, I'm going to let you tell that story to the judge." I says, "I don't believe it, and I'm going to see if the judge believes it." So I just took old George on in. And George told it to the judge, and the judge didn't believe it either. He gave it another time.
That's great. We'll see you next week with some more stories.